There's nothing better than a good old expansion pack for your favorite game. It's a win-win situation. You get to play more of the title in question while simultaneously supporting the team who created it. But while one DLC can be great, what about 100 DLCs? Can there be too many downloadable content? Let's find out in today's video. But first things first, roll the intro. There's a clear definition of what a DLC is. It's in the name, downloadable content. However, there are many different types of DLCs, ranging from small microtransactions to massive expansion packs. For the sake of consistency, the term DLC alone is usually reserved to paid additional content ranging from 5 to 30 euros. Anything below it is stuff like skins in free-to-play games, while anything above it is a big standalone game like Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Needless to say that the range of quality a DLC can have goes from Skyrim's Horse Armor to the 2 Half-Life episodes. It would be pointless to discuss if DLCs are good or bad, because the range of quality is quite vast. However, there is a debate to have regarding the quantity of DLCs a game can have, regardless of quality. Is there a limit where too many DLCs become a problem? There are many games out there that instead of having sequels have DLCs upon DLCs even years after the original release date. But is this a net positive or a net negative on the video game industry? Should developers limit the amount of DLCs to work instead on new iteration of the titles? Is there some sort of limit that...
Did somebody say Dando time?
Dando's War? My awesome friend from Pisa, the best city in Tuscany and way better than Ligurd... Wait, who wrote that on the script? What on earth are you doing around here and how did you get into my house?
I'm not here to talk about how easy it is to duplicate your keys, Fox, but why I think there should be no limits for the amount of DLCs a game can have. I have plenty of argumentation to defend my thesis. Do you have them as well?
Of course I do, Dando, and I will be more than glad to debate you to prove you wrong. Without further ado, let's start this cross-examination. DLCs may be cheap in small amounts, but I find it unacceptable that there are games that have 300, 400 or even 500 euros DLCs. I do not think it's a good practice to have full price games with DLCs that surpass the original price of the game, let alone if they do this multiple times. The main problem is that this harms the original game, because players who want to experience the complete title need to cash in 5 times the money already invested. Having an expansion or 2 can freshen up the experience, but having 10, 20, 30 DLCs starts to become an unnecessary burden and a tax to the naive player.
Surpassing the original price of the game is not a problem per se. If Far Cry 3, instead of having only Blood Dragon, would have 3 or 4 DLC of the same quality, why shouldn't I buy them? Furthermore, I could buy only the DLCs that improve the aspect of the game that I prefer. In Crusader Kings 2, I dislike playing as certain factions, so I can decide to buy the DLC only about the nation I usually select. The point is that DLCs can be a tool to customize the player experience, other than being a way to economically help the software house in continuing the developing of the game.
While it's true that having more options makes the choice of what to buy or not easier, too many options makes each DLC feel less special than the one before. Think about it, why not to have a big expansion like the Civilization franchise? Games like Hearts of Iron 4 sell separate DLCs for a handful of nations at a time. After the 10th, the 20th, the 30th expansion, what more can you add? Having too many DLCs makes the whole point of downloadable content feel more like a monthly subscription rather than a true expansion to the player's experience.
Yeah, I have to admit that having many DLCs is a risk for the player. The probability that the content could be rather poor in comparison to the price is high. I mean, we are talking about business company, not charity organizations. Still, having content being periodically published instead of having a monolithic game is a way to distribute the work for the developers and make financially sustainable longer developments. Why should a software house rush all the work for the launch date instead of releasing well-done chapters of the game? The feeling of it being a subscription is legit only if the company is not organizing well coherent and cohesive DLCs.
What you say holds true regarding distribution of work, especially for smaller studios over a long period of time. However, these justifications are a double-edged sword. Developers could claim that it's better for them and for the customers to have a diluted experience in a decade rather than a rushed release, but it is also true that too many DLCs can be used to compensate for an underwhelming experience. Let me put this in another way. If a game developer knows it's planning to release an ungodly amount of downloadable content down the line, why bother release a complete experience in the first place?
Undoubtedly, there are many examples of companies that took advantage of this policy. Paradox Interactive is known for releasing half-finished games and only completing them with years of DLCs. Specifically, in the case of Crusader Kings, they have reached the point where the third chapter of the series has significantly less mechanics than the second. And only with the last DLC, Royal Court, it has finally reached the level of a different self-sufficient game. But not every Paradox game suffers from this problem. City Skylines DLCs are able to increase the replayability to an already long-lived game, adding new flavors to develop your city in the direction you desire. Regarding companies that don't bother to release a complete experience, we have not to underestimate the power of the buyers. Imperator Rome, also from Paradox Interactive, was really dull at launch and was harshly reviewed and welcomed. A flop that brought to the stop of the game development only 2 years after its release.
While the quality of a DLC can vary greatly regardless of the quantity, it is still my belief that fewer yet greater expansions should be the norm. After all, less is more. Let's take the recent Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Park as an example. Rather than releasing every pack individually for $5, Nintendo offers the whole 48 courses at €25 with no strings attached. This inevitably enhances the value of the deal, both because it's a declared long-term commitment that holds back no surprises, and because it's a one-off payment that does not feel like a never-ending subscription.
Okay, I think we agree on the fact that DLCs must be a good deal for both company and customer. But still, why having a limit to the number of DLCs? Why do we ever put a barrier on creativity and confine a game in between certain borders? What I'm trying to say is that a video game can potentially be expanding to infinity, adding more and more interesting features, making it more and more complex and deep. The result will be some kind of mega game that evolves with the player so that they can customize it and buy new features only when they are interested in them. To refer to your last examples, why limit the DLC tracks only to 2-3 per game? If the game is already good, it would be better to expand it, instead of creating a sequel 3 or 4 years after that is identical to it.
What you say holds true in a utopian world, where downloadable content is done exclusively for the improvement of a game. While it is true that all DLCs by definition add something to a game, it is also true that having a big quantity of portable items could be a predatory tactic to keep players hooked to a never-ending title. This approach has a name: FOMO, the fear of missing out. Some gamers like to play Payday 2 and wouldn't mind playing a DLC or two, but if they really like the game and want more of it, nothing stops the Swedish developers back at Overkill Software to release unuseless and expensive expansions that, due to fear of missing out, even if they are poorly received, are still going to be purchased.
Well, it's clear that companies will try to hook players to the game. I mean, it's their job after all. But we have to be careful about taking responsibility away from the buyer. It's imperative for the player to be informed about the DLC they're interested in. Before buying, we must read the reviews and evaluate if the content really improves our gameplay. To refer one last time to Paradox Interactive, Crusader Kings D DLC Royal Court gave the game a spin that really differentiated it from its predecessor. But at the end of the day, all addition focused on objects and flagged bonuses that really don't match with my way of gaming, so I won't buy it. It's the gamer's job to beware and avoid FOMO traps, independently on how companies act and what they put to sale.
This debate can go for much more, but it is wise to take the main points in, reflect upon them, and reach a conclusion. The question posed in this video was if there's such a thing as too many DLCs. Dan and I broached our arguments, the prosecution and the defense, and we're not going anywhere without a proper verdict to close this case. To summarize the main points, the pillar that held Dando's defense were the personalization of purchase, longevity, and the ease of workload for smaller studios. On the other hand, I brought you the issues of pricing, dilution, and less is more arguments. So what is the answer to the question, can there be too many DLCs? After this debate, we have concluded that no, there is no such thing as too many DLCs, but as usual, there are some caveats. Video games no longer need to be rigid and inflexible products, but can be dynamic, never-ending softwares that are upgraded over time both with free and acquirable expansions. Having a limit on how many DLCs a game can have would inherently limit the developer's possibility to enhance and further develop a title loved by its community. Isn't that right, Dando?
Indeed, old fox! Once, a game had to be a compact unit, because to have it, you had to buy a CD. Furthermore, distribution was made through physical stores, and the player had no certainty that their DLC would even be available at the local store. Also, since graphics and tech are starting to reach a level where improvements can be achieved only by AAA games, DLCs are a tool to reduce cost of development and build new things on pre-existing games. City building, strategic, tactical, and management games certainly gain much more from expansion than sequels. We could say that the mindset of the game being only the base product is a legacy of the pre-internet era. Now that unloading big quantities of data is no longer unthinkable, DLCs are a valid alternative that has no limits.
As explained, it is important for developers not to abuse this feature and make little effort downloadable content for the sake of short-term profit rather than an actual effort to revive a title. Yes, I'm looking at you, Train Simulator 2012, with your $2,000 DLCs. But regardless, conceptually there is no harm in making many expansion packs, but do be careful. Just because it is possible doesn't mean it should be done ab nauseam. If you made it this far, I want to thank you one too many DLCs times for watching today's video. It was amazing collaborating with my good old Tuscan friend Dando, and I hope you liked both the debate itself and the format we adopted.
I do have to say that collaborating once more was real fun, like the old dark ages of gameplay, am I right, Fox?
Look, Dando, we don't talk about that in here, alright? Also, give back my house keys you have duplicated.
Okay, but you should change your door lock. Lockpicking is way too easy these days. Anyway, thanks for watching. Arrivederci.